He was just a single dad trying to make ends meet, working long hours raising his son and keeping his head down. Until one rainy afternoon at the airport, he picked up the wrong woman. But what she said next changed everything. Sometimes the smallest missteps lead us to the most unexpected places. And sometimes, the person you weren't supposed to meet is exactly the one you were meant to find. Stay with us for a story full of heart healing and the quiet power of kindness. And before we begin, if stories like this speak to you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another moment of inspiration. Now, let's begin. Single dad picked up the wrong woman at the airport. But the CEO said, "I've been looking for you." The rain came down in chaotic sheets, slashing the windshield like nature's own tantrum. Ethan Blake leaned forward in the driver's seat of the hotel's black SUV, squinting through the wipers as they struggled to keep up. JFK International was a maze of horns, headlights, and human exhaustion. Flights were delayed, rerouted, or outright canceled. Travelers shuffled like ghosts, their umbrellas flipping inside out in the wind. Ethan glanced at the dashboard clock, 5:42 p.m. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A message from hotel dispatch blinked on screen. Guest Catherine Walters has canceled. Do not proceed. He sighed. This was his last pickup for the day. Maybe he'd make it home early enough to read Liam a bedtime story. Not that the 7-year-old needed stories anymore, but Ethan liked reading them anyway. It was one of the few places where his voice felt safe, unjudged, like it still held value. He was about to pull away when the rear terminal doors hissed open. A woman stepped into the storm, dragging a small leather suitcase behind her. No umbrella, just a drenched wool coat clinging to her like a second skin. She paused on the curb, blinking rain from her lashes, scanning the crowd like she'd just realized she was on the wrong planet. Something about her stopped him. Maybe it was the way she clutched her coat shut, or the unguarded confusion in her expression. Maybe it was the fact that she looked like someone who never got rained on, someone used to first-class lounges and private cars, not stranded curbsides. He opened the window halfway. Miss Walters. The woman turned. For a beat too long, she said nothing. Her lips parted as if she were about to say no, but then something flickered across her face. Recognition. Hope. Sadness. "Yes," she said. "I suppose I am." Ethan hesitated, but the look in her eyes, like she hadn't spoken that word in years, made him unlock the doors. She slid into the back seat, dripping water onto the floor mats. Ethan offered her a towel he kept for Liam's soccer games. She accepted it with a faint smile, but said nothing else. No small talk, no instructions. Just silence, heavy and oddly intimate. As he drove, he kept glancing at her through the rear-view mirror. Her features were striking, refined, confident, but not overly made up. There was a calmness about her that felt rehearsed, like someone who had practiced serenity for years. Halfway through Queens, he cleared his throat. "Sorry about the wait. The airport's a mess today." She nodded without looking up. "It's all right. Some things are worth waiting for." The way she said it, it didn't sound like she was talking about traffic. Ethan's grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly. By the time they crossed the East River, the rain had eased into a whisper, tapping gently against the windows like a lullaby, trying to calm something inside them both. The Manhattan skyline loomed ahead, washed in gray. Ethan flicked his signal as they neared the hotel. "You sure you're staying at the Rosewood? I don't have a reservation under your name." "That's all right," she said. "I made some spontaneous changes." He parked beneath the awning, stepping out quickly to open her door. As she stepped onto the pavement, she paused, staring at him with a look that made his skin crawl in the most inexplicable way. "You really don't remember me, do you?" she asked softly. The words hit him like a flash of heat through the cold. He blinked. "Sorry." "Should I?" She tilted her head, her wet hair clinging to her cheek. "No, I suppose not." He watched her walk through the lobby doors, her heels clicking like punctuation marks at the end of some unfinished sentence. Back in the driver's seat, Ethan sat motionless for a long minute. Something about her bothered him, not in a bad way, but in the way an old song does when you can't remember the lyrics but can still hum the melody. He shook it off. His job was done. He had a kid to get home to laundry to fold and a sink full of cereal bowls waiting to remind him how ordinary his life really was. But as he pulled away from the curb, the clouds above began to break. A single shaft of sunlight pierced the storm landing directly on the spot where she had just stood. He didn't know it yet, but nothing about this day had been a mistake. The hotel lobby shimmered with quiet elegance. Crystal pendant lights, polished marble floors, and fresh-cut orchids whose perfume lingered like the memory of a kiss. Claire stepped inside, leaving the storm behind her, but she didn't shake off the chill. It was the kind that came from within, not from rain or wind, but from memories brushing against the edge of the present. The front desk attendant greeted her warmly, fingers poised above the keyboard. "Good evening. May I have your name for the reservation?" Claire hesitated. 1,000 names passed through her mind, names she'd signed on mergers contracts and letters of intent, names the press had plastered across headlines like badges of war, but none of them felt like hers tonight. Finally, she said, "Claire Donovan." The attendant typed. A beat passed, then another. He frowned. "I'm sorry, Miss Donovan. I don't see a reservation under your name. Perhaps it's under someone else's." She smiled faintly. "It's all right. I didn't book ahead." He blinked. "Oh. Well, we do have availability. Would you like a deluxe or an executive suite? I'll take whatever's furthest from the elevators," she said. "Quiet, if possible." He nodded and began the process. Claire's eyes drifted across the lobby. Through the glass doors, she could still see Ethan's SUV pulling away from the curb. Something tightened in her chest, some inexplicable blend of relief, pain, and hope. She had found him. But he didn't remember her. Up in her room, Claire dropped her coat over a velvet chair and peeled off her damp sweater. The suite was tasteful modern lines, soft lighting, quiet luxury, but to her it felt hollow. Most places did these days. She stood by the window and watched the rain. The city shimmered below its lights, glinting through the water-streaked glass like stars trying to fight their way through a storm. It had taken her nearly 15 years. 15 years since that night in the hospital. 15 years of therapy, of achievements, of building an empire out of the ashes of her grief. And still she had never stopped looking. She hadn't even known his name. No badge, no uniform, just a man in a worn hoodie sitting beside her as she broke down silently, offering her his coat and then his hand. He didn't speak. He just stayed. While nurses bustled past and doctors whispered final words to other families, he had anchored her to the earth. That night, he had saved her. And now she'd looked into his eyes again. The same eyes. Worn, now wearier, lined with responsibility. A father's eyes. But kind. Still impossibly kind. He didn't remember. Of course he didn't. The next morning, Ethan arrived early for work, Liam in tow. The boy was half asleep, clinging to his backpack like it was a life raft. "I hate Thursdays," Liam muttered as they entered through the service entrance. Ethan tousled his son's hair. "Thursdays build character. So do cold bagels, missed school buses, and your old man's bad singing." Liam grunted, but a smile crept in anyway. Ethan dropped him off with the front desk clerk who watched Liam on early shifts when no babysitter was available. As he passed the lobby, his eyes flicked automatically toward the guest list tablet. Claire Donovan. Room 1407. Still checked in. He told himself not to care. Clients came and went. So did names. But he couldn't stop remembering the way she'd said that line. "You don't remember me, do you?" Why did it haunt him? Later that afternoon, Claire entered the lobby wearing a fresh change of clothes, slim charcoal slacks, and a navy blouse, and her posture was different. Composed. Quietly powerful. The kind of presence that turned heads without trying. Ethan was speaking to a French couple whose luggage had gone missing in transit. He greeted them fluently in their native tongue, helping them calm down, switching effortlessly between English and French as he solved the issue. Claire paused a few feet away, watching him. The same man who once gave her his only warmth, now helping strangers with that same silent grace. He hadn't changed. Life had bent him, maybe even broken him, but he hadn't let it make him cold. When he turned and saw her, their eyes locked. Just a moment, no smile, no wave. Just the weight of something unspoken passing between them. That evening, Claire dined alone in the rooftop restaurant. She brought a notebook, but didn't open it. Instead, she watched the city breathe beneath her, its pulse constant, eternal. She had flown into New York under the guise of a business visit, but she hadn't told her team, hadn't scheduled a single meeting. She hadn't even packed a laptop. That wasn't like her, but neither was this. What was this obsession? No, it wasn't that. She wasn't chasing a fantasy. She was chasing the man who once sat beside her in silence and reminded her that even in the worst moment of her life, she wasn't invisible. She took a deep breath. Maybe she couldn't make him remember. But maybe that didn't matter. Maybe she just needed to give back, not out of obligation, but because sometimes life hands you a miracle in secret, and if you're lucky enough to hold on to it, you honor it the only way you can, by giving someone else the chance to be seen. She pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back in small, deliberate handwriting. Then she folded it and slid it into an envelope. Tomorrow she would give it to him. Not to demand recognition, not to claim anything, but to say, "I remember." And it mattered. The sun filtered gently through the windows of the Rosewoods Cafe, painting golden stripes across the hardwood floors and scattering warmth on a chilly New York morning. Claire sat at a corner table near the window, her coffee untouched, her gaze fixed on a small boy seated 2 tables away. A mop of dark blonde curls, a paper airplane in one hand, a slice of banana bread in the other. He was humming to himself something off-key and sweet. She couldn't look away. Ethan appeared moments later with 2 mugs of cocoa and a napkin he tucked under the boy's chin with practiced tenderness. The kind of touch that had long become second nature. "Careful, Liam. No more cocoa avalanches today." The boy giggled. That was one time Claire smiled without realizing it. When Ethan noticed her, he offered a polite nod, professional restrained. But there was hesitation in it. The way someone acknowledges a dream they're not sure they really had. Claire took that as permission. "May I?" she asked, approaching their table. Liam looked up first. His eyes were curious, fearless. "You're the lady from the elevator," he said, grinning. "I am," Claire replied, kneeling slightly to his eye level. "And I heard someone humming a tune I used to hum when I was your age. It's called Mission Mars." "I made it up," Liam said proudly. Ethan gave Claire an apologetic look. "He's a composer, among other things." Claire chuckled. "That's impressive. May I sit for a minute?" Ethan paused, unsure. But Liam, clearly having made the executive decision for the group, pulled out the chair beside him. "You can sit here," he said. Claire took the seat, easing into the strange comfort of their company. For a few minutes conversation flowed like a quiet stream, childish observations from Liam, cautious replies from Ethan, and a gentle rhythm between the 3 of them that felt oddly right. "What do you do?" Liam asked between bites. Claire smiled. "I'm a problem solver." "Like my dad," he said instantly. "He fixes everything. The radiator, the dishwasher, a broken nose one time." Ethan groaned. "That was an accident at soccer, not a bar fight." Claire laughed. "I believe you." "And you," Liam pressed. "What kind of problems?" She hesitated, choosing her words. "I help people who are stuck, people who've forgotten how big the world can be. I remind them." Liam gave a small, thoughtful nod. "That's cool." Ethan's eyes softened. "That's more poetic than most CEOs I know." Claire tilted her head. "How do you know I'm a CEO? You're staying in a penthouse, you wear clothes like someone who doesn't check price tags, and your phone hasn't stopped buzzing since you sat down, but you haven't looked at it once. That's power. Real power doesn't need to announce itself." Claire blinked, stunned into silence for half a second. Then, "You're observant." I drive people for a living, Ethan replied. I pay attention. People talk more when they think you're not listening. Something about that statement stayed with her. She leaned forward slightly. And, do you ever feel stuck? Ethan hesitated. Sometimes. Liam looked between them. We were stuck in an elevator once. That was the worst? Claire smiled. Was it scary? No, Liam said seriously. Because Dad held my hand and told me we'd be fine. And he was right. She swallowed hard. The image pierced something soft in her the same way that long-ago night in the hospital had when she thought the world had ended. But someone beside her refused to let her fall apart. Later that day, Ethan was rearranging guest luggage in the back storage bay when the hotel concierge passed him an envelope. This was left for you by the guest in 1407, she said. He opened it. Inside a business card. Claire Donovan, CEO, Donovan Nexus. And beneath the printed words, handwritten in fine blue ink, sometimes silence says more than words. You didn't speak that night, but you stayed. Ethan stood frozen, the card trembling slightly in his hand. That night. A flurry of dim recollections flickered, flashing white hallway lights, the sound of someone weeping on the bench outside the NICU. His own grief a raging sea. He'd sat next to her, not to fix her, just to be there, because she looked as lost as he felt. He hadn't known her name. He never expected to see her again. Back in her suite, Claire lay awake with the city blinking beneath her. She didn't expect him to rush in with gratitude or sweeping declarations. That wasn't what she was here for. She just wanted him to know it mattered. That the man who gave without asking, who sat in silent solidarity while her world fell apart, he had saved her. And now, if fate allowed, she wanted the chance to return the favor. Not out of obligation, but out of the quiet, profound truth that sometimes the people who once held your broken pieces eventually deserve someone to hold theirs. Tomorrow she would see him again, not as the girl from the past, but as the woman who had finally found the man who once saw her before she knew how to see herself. The lobby was quiet the next morning, sunlight filtering through the high windows like warm honey. The hustle hadn't yet begun, no guests in line, no ringing phones, just the low hum of city life beginning to stir. Ethan stood near the front desk, organizing a clipboard, trying and failing not to glance toward the elevator. She hadn't come down yet. He told himself he wasn't waiting, that the business card she left yesterday was just an echo of a forgotten moment. But truth had a way of sitting in your chest like weight, heavy, unrelenting. The memory was surfacing now whether he wanted it to or not. That hospital hallway, the blue-tinged lighting, the antiseptic chill, his hands trembling after hours of pacing, of praying. His wife, Samantha, was in labor. Complications. Premature. He'd gone to the hallway to breathe, to not fall apart. And there she was. A young woman, folded in on herself at the end of a bench face buried in her hands, shoulders shuddering with the kind of grief no one can fake. Something in him had known instantly that her world had just shattered. He hadn't known what to say. So he didn't say anything. He sat beside her, offered his coat, offered silence. And when her sobs threatened to tear her apart, he gently reached out and held her hand. No names, no words, just warmth. Ethan didn't hear the elevator ding behind him until Liam came running from the side hallway. Miss Claire, the boy, shouted. Ethan turned. She stood there in a simple ivory sweater and dark jeans, her hair pulled back casually, but her presence still lit up the room. She knelt smiling and opened her arms. "You remember me then," she teased. "I remember you," Liam said proudly, hugging her. "Dad says I forget stuff, but I remember the important things." Claire looked up just briefly and met Ethan's eyes. He was already watching. They met again at lunch, not by plan but by something quieter, something organic. Claire had taken her laptop to the Courtyard Cafe, a quiet space tucked behind the hotel with potted trees and wrought-iron tables. She hadn't worked at all. Her screen remained dark while her mind wandered. She didn't notice Ethan until he placed a glass of water on her table. She looked up. "Is this room service?" "No," he said. "Just thought you might need one." Her smile was slow, genuine. "Thank you." He sat across from her, an unspoken invitation she didn't question. For a moment, neither spoke. The rustling leaves and distant horns of New York filled the space between them. Then Ethan cleared his throat. "I remember you." Claire looked up, startled, not because she doubted he would, but because hearing it aloud felt like a key turning in a long-locked door. It was the maternity floor, he continued. "I was waiting outside the NICU. My wife, Samantha, was inside. We'd lost a baby before. This one was early, too. I went out to breathe and saw you on that bench." Claire's eyes shimmered. My mother had just died. Stage 4. It happened so fast. I didn't even have time to process it. "You looked so small," Ethan said quietly. "I didn't know what to do." "You did exactly what I needed," she said. "You stayed. No one else did." He looked down at his hands. "I didn't even remember your face. Until yesterday." "You weren't meant to," Claire replied, "but I remembered everything." A breeze lifted the edges of her napkin, and for a second neither of them moved, just let the silence wrap around them like the night they once shared, wordless but not empty. "I searched for you," she added. "Years later. Not obsessively, just hoping one day I'd run into the man who reminded me I wasn't invisible." Ethan shook his head gently. "I wasn't trying to do anything heroic." "I know," she whispered. "That's why it was." Later that day, Claire found herself walking through the hotel's quiet halls, a strange energy in her chest like something was blooming after years of lying dormant. She hadn't meant to stay this long, hadn't planned on getting involved. But Ethan was more than a moment from her past. He was proof that kindness wasn't a myth, that strength could come quietly. In the hallway, she passed Liam again. He was kneeling on the floor, coloring. "Hey, kiddo," she said, crouching beside him. "What are you drawing?" He held it up proudly. A stick figure family, 3 people holding hands, a house, a dog, a sun with too many rays. "That's me and Dad," he said, "and that's you." Claire blinked. "You drew me." "You're happy in it," he said, "'cause we let you stay." She bit her lip. "I haven't asked if I'm allowed to stay." Liam tilted his head. "Do you want to?" Her answer caught in her throat. "I'm starting to." That night, back in his modest apartment, Ethan sat in the quiet after Liam had gone to bed. He held the business card she'd given him in one hand, his thumb tracing the handwritten message. "You didn't speak that night, but you stayed." He stared at the sentence for a long time, then stood, walked to the shelf in the hallway, pulled out an old photo box, and for the first time in 7 years, he opened it. Inside were faded ultrasound photos, hospital bracelets, a yellowed page from a parenting magazine with a circled article about sleep schedules, and at the bottom, a frayed coat. His old hoodie, the one he'd given her. He'd forgotten he still had it. Ethan held it in his hands and exhaled slowly. There were moments in life that didn't ask for recognition. They asked to be remembered. And for the first time, he wasn't afraid of what would come next. He was curious, hopeful. Maybe, just maybe it wasn't too late to let someone stay. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the air still carried that earthy scent of streets washed clean like the world was offering a second chance. Ethan stood at the breakfast bar in his kitchen flipping pancakes for Liam, trying not to overthink what today might bring. But his hands betrayed him. He burned the first one and undercooked the second. Liam sat at the table legs, swinging back and forth, eyes fixed on his sketch pad. "Miss Claire likes strawberries," he said suddenly, as if it were part of some ongoing conversation. Ethan looked over his shoulder. "Does she?" She picked them off her muffin and saved them for last. "That means they're her favorite. That's what my teacher says." Ethan smiled in spite of himself. "You're observant." Liam grinned. "I get it from you." He flipped the next pancake more carefully, but his chest felt tight. Yesterday had shifted something inside him and he wasn't sure what to do with it. Claire stood by the lobby fountain tapping something into her phone before tucking it away. She wore a soft camel coat hair loose today, her expression focused but not closed. She seemed less like a CEO and more like someone deciding to be present. When Ethan approached her with Liam trailing behind, Claire looked up and her smile was immediate warm. "You two are becoming a habit," she said. Liam beamed. "We brought you something." He held out a small to-go box wrapped with a red napkin. Inside, 2 pancakes shaped like stars topped with fresh-cut strawberries. Claire laughed genuinely. "Are these?" "My dad made them," Liam said proudly. "I only helped with the taste testing." Claire glanced at Ethan, who shrugged, figured it was safer than burnt toast. They shared a quiet laugh, and for a moment it felt normal, effortless. That afternoon, Claire took Liam for a walk through the Central Park Conservatory garden. The hotel staff had offered a babysitter, but Liam had asked for Claire. He didn't want to see the new Spider-Man exhibit. He wanted to hang out with the lady who listens. Claire had blinked when Ethan told her, then simply said, "I'd be honored." Ethan had almost said no. Almost. He didn't know why he'd agreed, maybe because Liam seemed happier lately, or maybe because something in Claire's presence felt steady, unthreatening, familiar in a way Ethan hadn't known he was craving. But as he watched them leave, Claire holding Liam's hand, letting him set the pace, he felt an ache he didn't expect. Not jealousy, fear. Fear that he was letting something in. Again. Alone in the apartment that afternoon, Ethan found himself standing in Liam's room. It was a modest space bunk bed, posters of planets and dinosaurs, a bookshelf with more bedtime stories than any child would ever need. He touched a framed photo on the shelf. Samantha smiling in the hospital bed, Liam wrapped like a burrito in her arms. She had looked so strong that day, even after 20 hours of labor. And then, 12 days later, she was gone. A blood clot. A nurse said the word embolism like it wasn't supposed to shatter a life. Ethan had folded in on himself after that, gone into survival mode. The man who had once dreamed of building homes now worked fixing pipes and patching drywall. He didn't chase dreams, he clung to stability because hope was what made people bleed. He hadn't let anyone in. Not really. But Claire. Claire was different. She didn't push. She noticed. And somehow that was harder to resist than anything loud or dramatic. Meanwhile, in the garden, Liam was giving Claire a guided tour as if he were the appointed ambassador of Central Park. He pointed out every duck, every oddly shaped tree branch, every flower whose name he had half remembered. Claire listened, nodded, asked questions not out of politeness but with true interest. "Are you going to stay forever?" Liam asked suddenly as they reached a bench. Claire paused. "Forever is a long time." Liam squinted. "I don't like when grown-ups say that. They always mean no." She studied his face. "Would it be so bad if I stayed?" Liam shrugged. "Not to me. But Dad doesn't let people stay." "Why do you think that is?" He thought about it, picking at a blade of grass. "Maybe he's afraid they'll leave anyway." Claire's throat tightened. "Are you going to leave?" he asked, not accusing, just curious. "I don't want to," she said honestly. Liam gave her a slow, satisfied nod. "Okay, then I'll keep your seat saved." He patted the bench beside him. That night, Ethan opened the door to find Claire standing outside his apartment. She wore no makeup, no armor, just a soft expression and a paper bag in hand. "I brought soup," she said. He blinked. "Soup. You looked like someone who hasn't had dinner that wasn't beige in a long time." He chuckled, despite himself, and stepped aside. Inside, Claire set the bag on the table and unpacked 2 containers of homemade minestrone she'd had the hotel chef whip up as a favor. "You didn't have to," I know she interrupted. "I wanted to." They ate quietly. Liam told her about his science project and made her laugh with impressions of his teacher. But later, after Liam had gone to bed, the silence between Ethan and Claire changed. Deeper, more exposed. Claire sipped her tea. "Why did you let me stay?" He didn't answer right away. "Then, because I didn't realize how lonely I was, until I wasn't." Claire looked at him soft-eyed. "You don't have to fix everything, Ethan." He exhaled. "I've built my whole life around fixing things." She reached across the table, gently placing her hand on his. "Maybe it's time someone held you together for a while." He didn't speak, but he didn't pull away either. Outside, the city buzzed with the quiet pulse of a million lives moving on with or without you. Inside, for the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel like he was bracing for something to break. He just felt still. And maybe ready. The city was alive with the soft hum of early evening traffic, slowing windows, glowing autumn leaves, stirring in sidewalk gusts. Inside, room 1407, Claire sat at the small desk by the window. Her fingers paused above her keyboard. The cursor blinked on the empty email draft. She had intended to send a check-in note to her board of directors, just something simple to justify her extended stay. But her hands wouldn't move. What would she even say? "I came for a site visit and found the man who once held my hand in a hospital hallway 15 years ago. And now I don't know how to leave." Instead, she closed the laptop gently and stood. The reflection in the window looked back at her, not the CEO in polished heels and precision plans, but the woman who longed for something she'd never written into any 5-year strategy. A woman who for the first time in a long time didn't feel so tired of being strong. Downstairs in the hotel staff room, Ethan was watching Liam try to balance a muffin on his forehead while reciting the names of all the planets in reverse order. Neptune, Uranus, Saturn. Wait, no, I skipped Jupiter. The muffin toppled to the floor with a dramatic thud. Ethan laughed. "I'm impressed by the ambition, kid." Liam wiped his forehead and shrugged. "Miss Claire bet me I couldn't do it." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "She bet you muffins, mini muffins," Liam corrected. "She's a smart negotiator." Ethan smiled to himself, shaking his head. That woman had a way of slipping into their lives like she belonged there. And strangely, it didn't feel like an intrusion. It felt like oxygen. Later that day, Claire joined Ethan and Liam in the hotel's rooftop garden, a quiet, underused terrace with a view of the city that shimmered like a secret only a few were allowed to see. Liam ran ahead, chasing invisible dragons, while Ethan and Claire walked side by side along the stone path between potted lavender and tiny olive trees. Claire broke the silence first. "I've decided to stay a few more days." Ethan nodded slowly. "Everything all right with your schedule?" "I cleared it," she said, hands tucked into the pockets of her coat. "Apparently the company won't collapse without me for another 48 hours. He gave a short laugh. "Sounds like good leadership." She glanced at him. "Sounds like avoidance." He looked over at her, more serious now, avoiding what her gaze was steady. Leaving. Ethan stopped walking. "Claire, I'm not asking you for anything," she said quickly, her voice soft but steady. "I just want to be where I feel seen. And for some reason here with you and Liam, I do." He didn't answer right away. He looked out over the city. So many lights. So many lives. And somehow hers had crossed back into his. "I've spent years trying to make life small enough to control," he said at last. "Schedules, routines, repairs. If something breaks, I know how to fix it. But you..." Claire's brows lifted gently. "Me. You're not something I know how to fix," he admitted. "And that scares me." She stepped closer. "I'm not asking you to fix me either." A long silence passed between them. Not heavy, just honest. Then Ethan looked down at her. "Liam told me you're the lady who listens." Claire laughed softly. "He said that, yeah. He also said he wants to keep your seat saved, just in case you stay." Claire's throat tightened. "And you?" He hesitated. Then quietly, I haven't thought about what I want in a long time." That night, Claire found herself sitting in the hotel cafe with Liam while Ethan wrapped up a plumbing emergency in one of the guest suites. Liam was busy drawing on a napkin with a borrowed pen tongue poking out of the corner of his mouth in concentration. "What are you working on?" she asked. "A map," he said. "To the best day ever." Claire leaned in. "What's on it?" "Breakfast with Dad. Garden dragons. You. And pancakes." She smiled. "That does sound like a pretty good day." He paused, then looked up at her with an expression far wiser than his age should have allowed. "My dad's really brave, you know," he said. "But he gets scared too. He just doesn't say it out loud." Claire swallowed. "What do you think he's afraid of?" Liam shrugged. "I don't know. But sometimes I think it's the same stuff I'm afraid of, like someone saying goodbye without warning." Claire blinked. The weight of that landed deep. "I'm not planning to say goodbye," she whispered. "Good," Liam said, returning to his napkin, "'cause I haven't drawn the way out yet." Later that evening, Ethan knocked on Claire's door. She opened it slowly, a little surprised. He looked conflicted. "I don't usually do this," he began. Claire waited, but I didn't want the day to end without saying something. She tilted her head. "What is it?" He shifted his weight. "I'm not good at letting people in. I don't know how to do that and still keep Liam safe. Or myself." Claire's voice was calm. "That's okay. I just thought you should know." He said, glancing at the floor, that I haven't let anyone get this close in years. She stepped forward. And yet, here I am. He looked up, met her eyes. "Yeah," he said. "Here you are." She didn't touch him, didn't kiss him, just stood there quietly present. And somehow, in that stillness, something opened. Not all the way, but just enough. Enough to let the possibility in. Enough to make staying feel less like a risk, and more like the beginning of something finally worth hoping for. The day began with light spilling into the city like forgiveness. Central Park glistened with dew, and the streets, still damp from the night's drizzle, shimmered under early sunlight. Claire stood in front of her mirror, hands paused over her earrings. Her reflection looked calm. But inside, something trembled. Today was Liam's birthday. She hadn't planned to be here for it. She hadn't planned to still be in this hotel. But somehow, over the past week, the days had softened around Ethan and Liam like petals folding inward. And she wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. She had an idea. A simple one, but from the heart. A surprise. At the hotel, Ethan had just finished fixing a jammed door on the 11th floor when he noticed the time. 1:07 p.m. Liam should have been back from school by now. He headed to the front desk expecting to see his son waiting with a snack or doodling in the corner like always. But Liam wasn't there. "Hey, have you seen my son Ethan?" asked the concierge. The woman looked up. "Liam. Oh, I thought Claire had picked him up today. She said it was prearranged." Ethan's heart dropped. "She what?" "She said you two planned something for his birthday." He didn't hear the rest. The world around him blurred as adrenaline surged through his chest. He pulled out his phone and called Claire. No answer. Again. Voicemail. By the third ring, panic tightened its grip. He bolted for the staff elevator. Claire and Liam were walking through the Met Museum's Temple of Dender exhibit hand in hand. Claire had arranged for a small private guide to show Liam around the Egyptian artifacts, and the boy was bouncing with excitement. "This is awesome," Liam said, eyes wide. "Dad's gonna freak when he hears I saw a real mummy." Claire grinned, but worry crept at the edge of her thoughts. She had texted Ethan earlier, told him about the plan. Maybe she should have double-checked. Maybe her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. 6 missed calls, 3 voicemails, all from Ethan. Before she could press play, the phone rang again. She answered. Ethan. "Where is he?" His voice was razor-sharp. Raw. "Liam. He's with me. Well, you took him. Without telling me. Are you out of your mind?" Claire stopped walking. Liam paused beside her, sensing something shift. I left you a message. I thought you thought what Claire, that it's okay to take someone's kid without clear permission, that it's your place to make that call. Her voice lowered. I just wanted to make his birthday special. I didn't mean to. Don't bring him back to the hotel. Meet me at the cafe on 72nd and Columbus. Now. Then the line went dead. The cafe was almost empty when Claire arrived with Liam. Ethan was already there, pacing near the window, jaw, tight arms folded. Claire gently nudged Liam toward the counter. Go pick out something. I'll be there in a minute. Liam nodded slowly and stepped away. Claire turned to Ethan. Ethan, I swear I thought I was doing something kind. I wasn't trying to overstep. You did overstep, he snapped. He's my son. You don't get to decide what's good for him without asking me. I tried. I left messages. I thought you saw. You thought. That's the problem. His voice cracked then, just slightly. Claire's expression softened. I'm sorry. He looked at her eyes filled with something deeper than anger. Hurt. Fear. You don't get it, he said. You show up and suddenly Liam's drawing pictures with you in them. He asks if you'll be at Thanksgiving. You bake muffins and make birthday plans and laugh like you belong, but you don't. Not really. Claire's breath hitched. You think I don't understand loss? She asked, voice trembling. You think I don't know what it means to let someone matter and then lose them without warning? Ethan looked away, fists clenched. I'm not going to leave him, she whispered. Or you. You will, he said more quietly now. Eventually. People like you. You always leave. And Liam, he doesn't know how to recover from that. And I'm not sure I do either. Silence sat between them, thick as winter fog. Claire stepped forward. Ethan, she said gently, I don't want to fix anything. I just want to be here. But you're holding your whole life like it's made of glass waiting for the next shatter. I'm not the one breaking it. He closed his eyes. Tears pressed behind them but didn't fall. Maybe he murmured, I just don't know how to let someone stay. Claire reached into her bag and handed him a small envelope. Inside was a folded paper. Liam's drawing from the other night. The one with the sun, the house, and 3 people holding hands. I didn't ask for this, she said. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't want it. She glanced toward the counter where Liam was still picking between 2 pastries, totally unaware of the emotional wreckage a few feet away. I'll go if you want me to, Claire said. I'll pack up tonight. But I needed you to know I wasn't playing a part. I wasn't trying to win anything. She paused. I just wanted to belong somewhere again. Then she turned and walked to Liam. They left the cafe quietly. And Ethan, who had spent years mastering the art of holding everything together, felt something in him collapse. Not like a building, but like a dam. And the water behind it had a name. Claire. The hotel suite was unnaturally quiet that evening. Claire stood in the center of room 1407, her suitcase open on the bed, half filled, half abandoned. A folded blue sweater rested on top one she'd worn the day Liam spilled cocoa on her sleeve and laughed so hard he almost cried. She traced its sleeve with her fingers, then closed her eyes. How quickly something could start to feel like home. She moved slowly, methodically, placing books in a neat stack, zipping up toiletries, folding the photo Liam had drawn and tucked into her purse pocket. He had called it Our Team. Stick figures in front of a house with their names in blocky letters, Liam, Dad, Claire. The sun smiled in the corner. Her chest tightened. She'd promised herself she would never get attached without permission. And yet she had. Quietly, irrevocably, completely. She took a seat at the writing desk by the window and pulled a hotel notepad toward her. The pen hovered above the page. Then it moved. Ethan. I never expected to find you. I didn't come here searching for anything except closure. For years, I've remembered that night in the hospital, the worst night of my life, and how somehow the presence of a stranger kept me from falling apart. You didn't ask my name. You didn't offer cliches or try to fix what was broken. You just stayed, and that changed everything. I wanted to tell you thank you. I thought that's all it would be. But then I met Liam, and I saw your life, your quiet strength, the way you protect what you love with every ounce of yourself. And I realized that the man who once saved a stranger with silence had spent years saving his own son with the same gentle, invisible grace. And I fell for both of you. Not in some sweeping romantic way, not like the stories we see in movies, but in the real, deep, terrifying way people do when they realize they've found something too good to ask for. I didn't mean to take Liam without asking. I truly thought you'd seen the message. But more than that, I made the mistake of believing I belonged in your world without asking you first. I'm sorry for that, but I'm not sorry for caring. I'm not sorry for hoping. You said you don't know how to let someone stay. So I'll go, but I'm leaving you this not to change your mind, not to guilt you into chasing after me, but so you know what you gave me. You made me feel visible. You made me feel safe again. And if there's even a part of you that wants to find me not out of obligation, but because your heart is ready, then you'll know where to look. Until then, I'll keep the door open. Claire. She folded the note and tucked it beneath the ceramic mug on the kitchen counter. No signature, no drama, just truth. And then she pulled the zipper on her suitcase shut. As she turned off the lights and softly closed the door behind her, something in her chest ached, not like a bruise but like something newly unwrapped. A love not rejected, just not ready yet. Ethan didn't find the note until well past midnight. The hotel had quieted. Liam was already asleep, one arm draped over the side of the bed, clutching a half-crumpled drawing. Ethan had returned to room 1407, half expecting, half hoping to find her still there. But the room was empty. The air still held the faint trace of her perfume, warm, clean, like vanilla and quiet courage. He stood in the middle of the suite, motionless. Then he saw it, the mug on the counter, the corner of the note peeking out beneath it. He didn't rush. He walked to it as if it might disappear if he moved too fast. When he read the letter, his knees nearly buckled. He leaned against the counter, gripping the paper like it might anchor him. Every word hit something raw. Not because it begged, but because it didn't. Because she'd walked away with grace, not accusation. She'd loved with openness and accepted the silence that came back. And she'd left him the one thing he hadn't known he was missing. A choice. He sat on the edge of Liam's bed for a long time, watching his son breathe. Liam stirred one eye, fluttering open. Dad Ethan whispered, "Yeah, buddy, I'm here. Miss Claire, go home." Ethan hesitated. "Yeah, she did." Liam's voice was quiet. "Did you make her leave?" Ethan stared at the shadowed ceiling. "No," he said eventually. "I think I made her feel like she had to." Liam blinked up at him. "Why?" Ethan swallowed. "Because I was afraid." Of what? A pause. Of needing someone I couldn't keep. Liam shifted under the covers. "If you're scared, I'll hold your hand." Ethan closed his eyes. It was the same phrase he had once said to a frightened stranger on a hospital bench. The same one Claire had never forgotten. The same one Liam now offered back to him. He opened his eyes and looked at his son. "I think I need that," he said. Liam smiled sleepily and reached out his small fingers, wrapping around Ethan's. And in that fragile, perfect moment, something inside Ethan cracked open, not in pain this time, but in release. He didn't know what he would do yet. But he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let the best thing he'd found slip away in silence. Not again. Not this time. Morning broke slowly. It wasn't the kind of sunrise that demanded attention. It was soft, unassuming, the kind that crept through the blinds without asking and warmed the space between father and son like a quiet promise. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, Claire's letter spread before him. He'd read it again just before making Liam's breakfast. Then again while the toast cooled, and now again after Liam had gone to brush his teeth. There were no flourishes in her words. No grand confessions. Just grace wrapped in stillness. He didn't know people could love like that without needing to be chosen back, without demanding proof. He'd been so focused on protecting Liam from abandonment that he hadn't realized he'd built a wall high enough to keep love from ever getting in. And now he had no idea how to lower it without breaking everything he'd spent years holding upright. But Liam's words from the night before still echoed in his head like a thread of light. "If you're scared, I'll hold your hand." He turned the phrase over again and again. Because that was what Claire had done, wasn't it? She had held his hand in spirit and silence, and then, finally, in truth. And now it was his turn. After walking Liam to school, Ethan didn't go back to work right away. He called out of his shift and instead walked the long way through the city, retracing memories he hadn't meant to hold on to. The hospital. The bench where Claire had sat 15 years ago. He found it still there, paint-chipped but whole. He sat. Back then he'd sat here because he had no words. Today he sat here because there were too many. And for the first time he let them rise. The helplessness of watching his wife die. The terror of holding a newborn with no idea how to raise him. The years of pushing through, fixing, controlling, surviving, but never really living. And then Claire had appeared. Not to save him, but to see him. Not to demand anything, but to remind him that he too was allowed to want something more. He sat on that bench until his heart steadied. And then he stood. And he ran. Claire was seated near a window in the Delta Sky Club at JFK, hands wrapped around a cup of mint tea, watching the tarmac blink and bustle in the distance. Her flight to London boarded in 40 minutes. The noise around her, blurred luggage wheels, murmured conversations, the clink of silverware. None of it reached her. She hadn't cried, not when she'd left the hotel, not when the cab turned the corner, not when the gate agent printed her boarding pass. She told herself she was proud of how she'd left things dignified with love intact, but sitting here now with no one beside her, she felt hollow. The kind of hollow you only feel when you've tasted something real. And lost it. She looked down at her phone. No messages, no missed calls, no miracle last-minute arrivals. She'd told herself she didn't expect one, but still she hoped. Back in Manhattan, Ethan burst through the school's front office at 10:42 a.m., drawing looks from the receptionist and a few teachers. "I need to see Liam," he said, slightly out of breath. The woman blinked. "Is something wrong?" "No," he said. "Something's right. I need to tell him something." Within minutes, Liam appeared, lunchbox swinging at his side. "Dad," he asked, confused. "Did I forget something?" Ethan knelt in front of him, heart-pounding. "No, buddy. I forgot something." Liam tilted his head. "I forgot to say thank you," Ethan said, his voice catching. "Last night you said something to me. About holding my hand." "I meant it," Liam whispered, suddenly shy. "I know," Ethan said, smiling. "And because of you, I think I'm ready. Ready for what." Ethan stood, his hand resting lightly on his son's shoulder. "To find her." Liam's eyes lit up. "Miss Claire." Ethan nodded. "Yeah." "Miss Claire." Liam didn't hesitate. "Let's go." The cab hit traffic 3 blocks from the airport. Ethan glanced at the time, 10:58. Claire's flight boarded at 11:15. Liam kept bouncing beside him, peeking out the window like he could somehow will the cars to part. "She always waits at the window," he said suddenly, "when she's nervous." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "She told me," Liam said proudly. "She doesn't like being early to gates, but she likes to see the plane." Ethan laughed. "You really do listen." "I get it from you," Liam said, and it nearly undid Ethan. They sprinted through Terminal 4, dodging rolling luggage and startled travelers. At the top of the escalator near Gate 22, Ethan spotted her. Claire, hair tucked behind one ear, a book open on her lap, unread, staring out at the runway. His heart hammered. Claire. She turned, saw them. For a second her face was unreadable, and then she stood. Ethan didn't slow as he approached. His voice was raw, breathless. "You said if I wanted to find you?" Her eyes shone. "I meant it." He stepped closer. "I was scared." "I know," she said gently. "So was I." He reached into his coat pocket and held up the folded drawing Liam had made, the one with all three of them hand in hand under a crooked sun. "I've spent years afraid of letting someone stay," he said. "But you already did. And now, I want to stay with you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't want to fix anything," he added. "I just want to build something. Together." Claire didn't speak. She just stepped forward, took his hand, and placed it over her heart. Liam stood beside them, wide-eyed and beaming. A quiet family. Imperfect, unexpected, but whole. And somewhere a plane rolled past the window. Forgotten. They didn't take the flight. Claire canceled it quietly with a single look toward the agent at the gate. No fanfare. No rebooking. Just the quiet surrender of a plan that no longer made sense. She had spent years living by itinerary strategic timelines, investor calls, international hotel suites, but this moment at Gate 22 with two sets of hands folded into hers was the only appointment that had ever really mattered. Back in the cab, Liam sat between them, knees bouncing. "I thought we'd have to run faster," he said seriously, "like in the movies." Claire smiled. "You mean we didn't look cool enough? You looked like you were about to faint," he told his dad. Ethan laughed, an unguarded open laugh that filled the quiet space around them. Claire turned her face slightly toward the window, blinking hard. Not because she was sad, but because something in her chest, long frozen, was starting to thaw. When they arrived at Ethan's apartment, Claire hesitated outside the door. She'd been here once, but now it felt different. More real. Less borrowed. Like she had earned the right to step inside, but only if she still wanted to. Ethan caught her pause. "You okay?" Claire nodded, then looked up at him. "I don't want to force my way in." "You're not," he said softly. "You're being asked in." She looked at Liam, who grinned and whispered, "We saved your spot." That did it. She stepped inside. The apartment was simple, but lived in. Not picture perfect. A stack of clean laundry waited to be folded. Liam's toys were tucked into corners in soft rebellion against tidiness. There were family photos on the wall, Ethan with a much younger Liam, his late wife smiling from an old picture frame, sunlight caught in her curls. Claire took a slow breath. She wasn't replacing anyone. She wasn't erasing anything. She was being invited into something already good, just ready for more. Ethan brought her tea and sat beside her on the worn couch. The silence between them was no longer awkward, it was full, soft, heavy in a beautiful way. "You know," he said, after a long pause, "I always thought I was protecting Liam from pain by keeping people out." Claire turned toward him. "But the truth is," he continued, "I was protecting myself. From hope. From the kind of hope that doesn't come with guarantees." "I know that kind," Claire said quietly. "It's the kind that's only real when it's not promised." They looked at each other. No more explaining. Just truth. Quiet and mutual. "I missed you the second you left," Ethan admitted. "And I didn't even know I had the right to miss you." Claire smiled. "You didn't need permission." That night, Liam insisted they all bake something together. Claire offered suggestions, banana bread sugar cookies, but Liam had already decided. "Upside-down pineapple cake," he announced. Ethan blinked. "We've never made that. I saw it on TV. It looks happy." So they tried. They spilled flour, burned the first attempt, laughed so hard that Claire had to sit down, at one point tears of joy streaking her cheeks. Ethan stood at the stove with his arm around her shoulders as she wiped her eyes. Liam decorated the second cake with pineapple slices that looked like lopsided suns. "It's kind of perfect," he declared. Claire took a picture of the three of them holding the cake, Liam in the middle, beaming. It wasn't glossy, it wasn't curated, but it was real. And in that photo there was no emptiness, no missing piece, just wholeness. Later, when Liam had fallen asleep on the couch, Ethan carried him gently to bed. Claire followed, pausing at the door as Ethan tucked the blanket around his son's shoulders and kissed his forehead. He turned to find Claire watching. "He's lucky," she whispered. Ethan smiled. "I think I'm the lucky one." They returned to the living room. The apartment felt warm, more like a home than any place Claire had lived in years. She stood by the window gazing out at the night. "I used to believe healing looked like forgetting," she said softly. "That to move forward you had to leave everything behind." Ethan joined her, their shoulders nearly touching. "And now?" he asked. She turned, eyes gleaming. "Now, I think healing looks like this. Letting what hurt you shape you, but not close you." Ethan reached for her hand. This time she didn't hesitate. "I'm still scared," he admitted. "So am I. But I think I want to be scared with you." Her smile was small but radiant. "Then that makes two of us who are finally brave." He leaned in, slow, careful. Their foreheads touched, a breath shared, and in the quiet of that night, without declarations or fireworks, something sacred unfolded. Not the beginning of love, but the return to it. In another room, Liam stirred in his sleep, unaware that just down the hall his world had quietly rearranged itself into something even better. Not perfect, but true, and for the first time in a long time, the air between all three of them felt like it was finally full of promise. 3 months later, the wind had turned cold again in Manhattan, curling through the streets with the sharp promise of winter. But inside the small apartment above 86th Street, warmth danced in the air, laughter, the smell of cinnamon, the soft rustling of paper-wrapped presents being sneakily hidden in closets Liam wasn't supposed to open. The holidays were coming. Claire stood by the kitchen counter wearing one of Ethan's flannel shirts over leggings, her hair tied in a loose knot as she carefully placed handwritten tags on gifts. She didn't rush. She liked this part, the quiet, choosing the deliberate gesture. Nothing bought in a panic. Nothing hollow. In the living room, Liam was sprawled out with construction paper and markers working on a card for his Christmas homework hero, a new title he'd invented for Claire just that morning. Ethan entered from the hallway, rubbing his hands together to fight the chill. He watched them for a moment, unnoticed, the two people who had changed everything. "Okay," he said. "The tree lights are officially fixed." Again. Claire looked up and smiled. "I told you to stop letting Liam plug in every toy spaceship at once." Liam grinned. "They need backup power." Ethan shook his head in mock despair. "One day, you'll learn about energy bills." Claire crossed the kitchen and wrapped her arms around him. "Until then, we have backup love." He blinked. "That was corny. I stand by it." They both laughed, and for a moment time slowed. There had been 1,000 little moments like this over the past few months, cups of coffee shared before school drop-off dinners made side-by-side bedtime stories told by two voices instead of one. But none of it had been rushed or forced. It had been chosen, day by day, and that was what made it real. Later that night, snow began to fall. It started gently, just a few flurries tapping against the window before blooming into soft waves that blurred the edges of the city and made even the sirens sound distant. Claire and Ethan stood together by the window mugs of tea, warming their hands. "You know," she said, leaning into his shoulder, "I used to think love was supposed to be grand. Some big movie scene, a kiss in the rain, fireworks, applause." Ethan chuckled. "And now I think love is when someone remembers how you take your tea, or saves you the last bite of pie without saying anything, or watches the snowfall with you like it's the first time." He looked at her. "So, we're not getting applause." Claire shrugged. "We got Liam." "That's better." Across the room, Liam was curled up on the couch, head resting on a pillow, a book half finished in his hands. He'd insisted on staying up to see the snow, but the warmth had gotten to him first. Ethan stepped forward, lifted his son gently into his arms, and carried him to bed. Claire followed, tucking the blankets over Liam's shoulders. As she leaned in to kiss his forehead, Liam stirred slightly. "You're staying right," he murmured. Claire looked at Ethan. Their eyes met, and in that glance was everything what they had feared, what they had fought, and what they had finally found. "I'm staying," Claire whispered. Liam's lips curled into a sleepy smile before he drifted back under. Back in the living room, Ethan lit a small candle on the windowsill. It had become their ritual. One light every night, like a quiet way of saying, "We're here." Claire joined him, slipping her hand into his. "Do you ever wonder how different things would have been?" She asked if we hadn't met again that day at the airport. Ethan nodded. "All the time." "Do you regret anything?" He shook his head slowly. "No, because every scar, every wrong turn, every year I spent afraid, brought me right back to you." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know," he added, "you still never explained what you were doing at JFK that day. You didn't have a reservation. You just showed up." Claire smiled. "I was supposed to be on a flight to London for a summit, but that morning I woke up and couldn't go. I kept thinking about that night in the hospital, about how I never said thank you. I got in a car without a plan. I just needed to find you." Ethan looked at her for a long time. Then he said quietly, "Thank you for showing up." They stood there watching the snow coat the world in stillness. In the corner of the apartment next to the bookshelf was a framed picture, three people hand in hand beneath a crooked sun, drawn in crayon on faded paper. Beneath it, written in Liam's blocky handwriting, "Our family." "The long way home." And above them, in tiny lettering, Claire had added, "One night love doesn't always arrive on time, but it always finds its way." Outside, the city kept moving. But inside that small apartment there was light. Not loud, not dazzling, but steady. Like the kind of light you leave on when someone you love is trying to find their way home. And this time, they had. We'd love to know, where are you watching from? Share your city or country in the comments below. It's always heartwarming to see how these stories connect with people all over the world. And if this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another inspiring moment. Thank you so much for watching. Your time, your presence, and your kindness mean more than you know. We'll see you in the next story.